everybody, it's Christian here. So there's one topic that you're going to hear talked about on the campaign trail by some candidates and carefully omitted by other candidates. And that topic is data privacy. Who's gathering our data and what exactly are they doing with it? And what policies are being proposed to better protect our data and give us access to potentially having more control over it? So to understand all that's happened over the last 2.5 decades would be a lot to unpack and a lot to go over. But in my view, there's 3 pivotal cases that have happened over the last 6 years that everyone should know about, should have fresh in your mind when you're listening to these candidates talking about their ideas for how to protect our data. I'm going to go into those right now. The first one, 2017, Cambridgeanalytica. So a British consulting firm called Cambridgeanalytica was collecting personal data from millions of Facebook users. This came out in 2017, 2018. And it was a whistleblower that worked at the company named Christopher Wiley. He leaked this story that data was collected through an app that was developed by Alexander Kogan and was used to impact the 2016 presidential campaign. So once this whistleblower came forward with this information, there was a media frenzy and Facebook users generally up in arms over the information. So the Federal Trade Commission opened an investigation. They sued Cambridgeanalytica's CEO, Alexander Nix, as well as Alexander Kogan, the developer of the app. And both parties agreed to destroy the collected data and any derived work product. Facebook, on the other hand, had to pay a $5 billion fine to the FTC, as well as a $100 million fine to the SEC. I was interested about where this money went. That is a pretty good fine. That's a nice slap on the wrist for Facebook. That's certainly not going to hurt them that badly, but it's not nothing. And I was wondering where the money went. It turns out that $5.1 billion went mostly to legal fees for the cases, as well as to the U.S. Treasury. It's estimated that Facebook victims that were a part of this scandal were given a $30 settlement. $30. Okay, case number 2. This just happened a year ago. Once Elon Musk bought Twitter, took it private, he released a lot of the information about how the platform had been dealing with government agencies' request to censor certain topics and certain users talking about these topics. So he tapped really well-known veteran publisher journalists Matt Taibbi, Michael Schellenberger, and Barry Weiss, as well as a couple of other ones. And the leaked documents basically detailed the company's internal discussions and decisions relating to CIA requests, FBI requests as well, to censor content relating specifically to COVID and vaccines. It's also important to note that Elon Musk fired Twitter's Deputy General Counsel, James Baker, upon taking over the company because Baker was vetting information before it was passed to journalists. Now, what this actually meant was the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story, a story that would have broke just weeks before the presidential election, and all surveys are showing now would have actually swayed voters away from voting for all of the material that's been found on that laptop, linking Joe and his family to some pretty unsavory actions. So the Twitter files really revealed this Frankenstein tale, as it's called, of this human-built mechanism, Twitter, that grew out of control. The documents demonstrated how Twitter, influenced by its predominantly left-wing employee base, displayed a left-wing leaning bias in content moderation, often in response to requests from government agencies like the CIA and the FBI. That's an important one to know, and that one's still fresh. Then the last case, and this is probably the biggest case that's happening, and unfortunately it happened after the Twitter files, and we haven't seen nearly as much coverage of this story, but this is the case called Biden versus Missouri, unofficially called the Facebook files, because what was happening at Twitter, we have a lot of indication and evidence that this was actually happening at Facebook as well, and not only Facebook. So the case of Missouri versus Biden involved allegations that the federal government, led by Joe Biden's administration, pressured social media companies like Meta, Twitter, and YouTube to censor conservative views and criticisms of the Biden administration. This is a clear and blatant violation of the First Amendment. The lawsuit was filed by the states of Missouri and Louisiana, arguing that the government's actions in contracting social media companies constituted coercion. The case eventually reached the U.S. Supreme Court, where it stands right now today. This is still actually an active case. So subpoenas were issued to members of the Biden administration, including Anthony Fauci and Karine Jean-Pierre. The plaintiffs claim that the deposition of Anthony Fauci proved that social media platforms censored content based on government influence during the pandemic. So the takeaway from this case, which I cannot overstate, is that the Biden administration was systematically exerting control over social media platforms to hide information that could be potentially harmful to the administration and to boost content that was harmful to his rivals, his adversaries. This is the kind of story where if you didn't know the country it was happening in, you would just assume it was some emerging third world country that is riddled with corruption. But this is happening right here in the States. This is a banana republic story that is actually happening. It's in the case. It's in the courts right now. And so this particular case in general should conclude over the next few months. Hopefully it will be a story that people are reading about and thinking about when they're deciding who to vote for in 2024. But this last case in particular will have a significant implication in the future of social media regulation and data privacy in general. So at the very least, I think we should be looking for somebody on the campaign trail to mention this case. It could be an absolute landmark case in the regulation of social media companies and data privacy. It might be the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. So all these three cases are things that the takeaways from these cases, I think, are very overtly that, especially in the last 6 years, but probably before that, there is a corporate and government collusion, big tech and agencies within our own government that are working together to censor us whenever we ask questions that go against the official narrative. And also if we are showing favor toward whatever party is not currently in the White House. This is a really bad precedent. And hopefully we are going to have policies being presented during the presidential campaign that reduce the government's ability to see what we're talking about, to take our data, to just get it hook, line, and sinker at a simple request from these big tech companies. So keep these things in mind, stay vigilant, stay aware, and stay tuned to the TAO of Data for more updates like this. Thanks. Bye.
TAO of Data.